Hey, interdimensional traveler. I'm Miriam Miara, and you're listening to Aspects of Energetics, where I converse with others who use energy work, energy medicine, and energy healing arts in their practice and their personal lives. I started this journey with the aim to connect with others who work with multidimensional approaches to life, those that touch and see the mysterious planes of existence, and those that have made the adventurous decision to use modes of energy to heal themselves and others while remembering who they are. Thank you for joining me today as we embark on a multidimensional dive into the alternative side of alternative self-care, energy practices, and modalities.
Because I'm a walk-in, I didn't know, like, what is the actual date? I mean, I just walked in July 1st of 2024. This is the last walk-in. And I believe I told you I embodied as the oversoul when I did this.
Wow. Okay. So how do you know for sure it's the last though? Did you get the clear message this is the last time?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. And I know because of what I had to release in order to actually get back into my body. Because I had to release all of the other walk-ins. It's funny because a teacher of mine tells me they don't like to be called walk-ins. They want to be called transfer students. And I'm like, I mean, I'm
Oh,
a walk-in and I don't really care. It's like I'm not that worried about I'm not that worried about titles and whatnot, right? But I was aware as it was happening. And I was with my husband. We were driving from the nearest town to us home. And I lost time 3 different times. And it was very disorienting. And the first time I just told him, I said, Travis, I'm losing time. And then it's flash again, and I'm like, Travis, I have no idea where we are right now. I don't know where we are on the road, and this is a road I know very well. And when I said it the second time, I said, I think that we're losing. I said, I think something's happening right now. He went to spin his wedding ring on his finger, and it was smashed in half. Smashed in half. He had a dent on the inside of it. I'll send you a picture of the ring. But
wow.
it was dented on the inside of his finger, smashed in half to where it was almost coming open at the sizing. And and I mean, he takes his wedding ring off and on every day. So he said to me, he's like, maybe we were in an accident and we were reset. And he says that to me, and then I lose time again.
Wow.
We're approaching this bridge coming into the small town. You know, we live in a national forest. And so you have to go through a huge mountain to get to our house. And we're coming up to the bridge, and I said, did we go through the mountain? And saying that, like knowing what a dumb question it is, but I mean, I was shocked. And he said, yeah. And I said, I have no recollection of doing that, right? So this is July 1st of 2024. We were
Okay.
so discombobulated that like 6 days later, and I mean, like a little zombie-ish, you know, just out of it. And 6 days later, he and I did a 6-day fast. Like it was nothing. It was like an unconscious thing. And I recognized it was so easy. I said, something big is going on here
You
because
guys did a water fast
For
or
six
what kind of
days, for six
for
days,
six?
I got sick. I threw up. And I don't mean I made myself throw up. I agreed to the fast, and it's like my stomach was instantly emptied, right? And so things were so strange for the month of July, and I couldn't get my bearings. I couldn't get to my intuitive abilities. I couldn't, you know, my heart is my yes. So when I ask myself a question and it's a yes, my heart will expand. Like I feel it, like this beautiful warmth that spreads out, right? I couldn't get there. So I reached out to a teacher that I hadn't worked with since 2021, and she works with spiritual response technique. And I reached out to her and I said, Jan, I said, I have some really weird stuff happening. And I said, you're probably going to tell me it's ego. I was hoping she would, is the truth, because I felt a little crazy. I said, you're probably going to tell me it's ego, and that's fine, but I'd like to tell you what's happened. And so I told her, I said, you know, we were going home. I don't know if we were in an accident and reset, but neither one of us have felt quite right. And she says, yes. She says, I'm getting you lost time 3 times. And I said, yeah, that's how many times. And and I told her, I said, I feel like I've had another walk-in. And she said, you have. And I said, it feels like a full soul exchange. And she says, it is. And then she worked on, and what she told me is that early in the week, she had experienced something while she was driving with her mom. And her mom is in the early stages of dementia. And so her mom was just kind of chattering along. And she was suddenly taken from where she was to another her that was in a car accident. And she said she was kind of going back and forth between these two states.
Timelines?
Yeah.
Is it timelines, you think? Herself
Yes.
with her mom
Yes.
and then herself in a car accident.
Yes. So 2 different timelines. And she said, I saw myself in an accident. You know, I was put into an ambulance. So I'm listening to my mom and also holding space for this while I'm taking my mom, you know, like for her normal shopping, right? And to the point where she needed physical therapy. She needed physical therapy to get her body back, right? So she worked on me for, you know, several times in July. And by the time we got to August, she's like, I don't know what to do with this. She said, I don't think this is for you. Like, meaning, I don't think this is the modality, right? She said, I've never seen beings with soulless beings, which I had a ton around me. I haven't seen soulless beings at this high of a level of consciousness. And so it was this big mystery. So she
Okay,
quit.
wait. I'm sorry. I want to rewind for a second. So
Yeah.
what was the significance, do you think, of the 2 timelines that were happening concurrently or simultaneously?
Because I think that what's happening is that these parallel timelines are collapsing in upon themselves. So it's very easy to create parallel timelines, you know, people that sit and fantasize a lot. And I don't mean, you know, people that are trying to escape. There's an energy of escapism to the fantasy, right? You can create timeline after timeline after timeline. And what
Okay.
it's felt like to me since June of 2024, particularly, it's like this squeezing in. It's like this pressing in, like everything's being drawn in, and it feels like a hallway, or it can feel like the birth canal, right? And it is all of this stuff that can no longer exist together, like in this realm. It can't exist together anymore. So it's all kind of converging so that what is highest and best, if that's what you are actively pursuing, what's highest and best stabilizes. And the first or second day of August, I had this appointment with an osteopath that I'd been seeing since March, that had been working on all of my subtle body, you know, all of my fluid body, because I've had a lot of trauma to my body. And so I saw her July 1st, and then not again until August 2nd. She's who we were driving home from. I was driving home from the osteopath appointment when I lost time 3 times. And so she sees me on August 1st. She puts her hands on my ankles and her eyes just get huge. And because she told me at the last appointment, she's like, your body is really like, it's so good, and everything's flowing so much better, and I'm really seeing improvement. And she puts her hands on me, her eyes get big, and she's like, what happened to you? And I mean, what do you say? I'm not a good liar. I'm not a good liar. So, and it's not something I aspire to be. But I just told her, I said, okay, so here's the thing. This is going to sound really crazy, but this is what happened. And so I told her this happened. And at the end of the appointment, and so she continued to work on me, and she said, it is so hard getting the light to come into you.
It's so funny because right now you're framed by the light. It's a good story.
Yeah, the sun is coming up over the mountains here. It's so funny.
So
I
interesting. I
didn't,
can't wait to get into the charts about this date, because your chart on this date, this time is parallel completely to
yeah,
what you're talking about. It's so
yeah.
interesting.
So anyway, at the end of those appointments, she always sets the next appointment. And this is a woman that I drove, an hour, 20 minutes to see once or twice a month, paid her cash when I did. I was a good client, right? That session scared her so much that she stopped working with me. And she said, I think you need a more skilled practitioner. And she was top of the class, whatever. It had nothing to do with that. It was like, she's like, this girl's stuff is, this woman's stuff is too much. So here I am. I had about, I don't know, a half day of pity party, because here's my teacher going, I can't help you. Here's my osteopath going, I don't want your money. So I'm going, what next? And so the SRT that the first teacher was checking me with, that's a modality that I had learned back in 2021. It's spiritual response technique. It was created by Robert Detzler. I hadn't worked with it since that time. And I felt really drawn to it. Now the light's getting like, whoo. But I felt really drawn to it. So I found another teacher. And I had a session with her first. And when I had the session with her, she found things that had been cleared already. She found my sister. She found my youngest son's dad died in 2015. She found my father-in-law that died in 22. She found my 81-year-old shamanic teacher that had died in 2022, right? And these are beings that had been crossed with this modality. All of their energies are cleared, all of that kind of stuff, right? And so it was strange to me that they were still here. And she's like, well, it's fine, they're gone now.
Why do you think they came back, or they're still there?
Gone. They weren't gone.
It's completely
Because, and this
gone.
is what I've found, that this is so hot off the spiritual press, Miriam. This is what I've found in this last month, right? What happens? So when my grandmother, my maternal grandmother, lost her firstborn child when he was 4. His name was Sonny. And she was still grieving him on her deathbed. And she was grieving him because they were so poor when he passed away that they couldn't afford a coffin for him. They had to bury him in a wooden box. So you can imagine how distraught she is. Her only child, her only son, she was in an unhappy marriage. And she felt so horrible that he wasn't honored at his death. What happened is he didn't cross. He didn't cross, and he attached at her womb. And so because he attached at her womb, her 3 daughters that were born after all had his material enmeshed with their wombs. So then all of their kids had his material enmeshed in their wombs. I mean, enmeshed. He was in the womb with me when I was born. When this body was born, there were 5 other souls, and one of the in the womb. And this is something that people kept saying to me. There were a lot of beings there when you were born, right? And something that kept coming up for me to be healed was suppressed male child inner archetype. And the first teacher I was talking about, she said, "Oh man, your inner male archetype is inner child male archetype is so suppressed." She said it's like you were made to wear dresses when you didn't want to, and made to be all girly and all this kind of stuff. And I said, false. My dad used to call me the toughest boy in the neighborhood. Like, I climbed trees. I had a little brother that was 3 years younger than me. I dug forts for him. And, I definitely was not a girly girl when I was growing up. My mom would put us in dresses for church or whatever, but there's no way that I should have a suppressed male inner archetype. I literally just found this piece when you and I started communicating, 10 days ago or whenever it was, about this. And what it was is because he was in the womb with me. And I don't know quite, I haven't asked questions. I just got super clear yesterday, I have to tell you, after that 3-day fast, which I'll go into. But I'm not quite sure why the other 4 males, but I had 4 male souls in the womb. I don't know if the 4 male souls were sent there. I don't know if it's something meant to catch us up. Like, when I say catch us up, to hang us up is a better way to put it. But I had these 4 other male souls plus Sonny in the womb. So this was the suppression of my male inner child, because I had all of this masculine energy in the womb, suppressing that inner child at the womb, because that's specifically where they said it was. It's, you have a fractured inner child, it's at the womb, and suppressed male inner archetype, right? And so,
That's fascinating. I can relate to this so much. I feel like I want to talk to you about this because something happened
oh,
in my family very
we're
similar.
we're gonna talk for sure. We're gonna talk for
Okay.
sure. But anyway, so what happened?
I love the light shining on you, by the way. It's
It's
just
so fun.
brilliant.
I keep trying to move it. I keep trying to move it. Like, it seems like it's too much.
No,
But
it's go with it. It's not.
okay, okay. So anyway, so this, I had to clear all of the energies for Sunny in order to free the child that was at the womb, right? So the inner child that was at the womb was also a transfer student. Any being that's been in this body prior to me is a walk-in. It's something that was agreed upon. I haven't asked yet if it's so many walk-ins because of what was all of the traps set up at the beginning with all the other souls in the womb. Because again, like we talked about last time, once you're enmeshed, you can only transform your material. I can't transform somebody else's topics. I can only transform what's there for me. So these people saying, you need to love your inner male, child. And I'm like, that kid's going to put a restraining order on me. I have loved him so hard. It's like, there's nothing more for me to say, and I do inner child work. This is one of the things that I do with people. So I know inner child work, right? So I knew it, and this is a message to anybody out there. If you know something, I don't care what teacher, how much you respect them or whatever, if you know something in your gut is off and somebody's telling you it's okay, oh no, you're fine, find somebody else. Like,
Yeah, that's good
keep going,
advice.
keep going.
The
Because,
amount of gaslighting I've had with different professionals.
oh my, I mean, yeah, you and I probably, if we had a nickel for everyone, could, start something pretty big. But so anyway, I had to clear this. I had to clear the inner child at the womb. I get that inner child cleared. I can't cross her. I can't clear her through clearing transfer students. I can't clear her by crossing her. She won't cross.
Okay.
And so I kept working. I found a 4-year-old, another transfer student. So I get to the 4-year-old. I do everything I need to do for the 4-year-old. She won't cross. I finally get to an 8-year-old. And the grandmother that is kind of the center of this story, she was my Mimi, and it was my mom's mom. And I told you last time that I kind of only had lowlights of my childhood. I didn't have highlights, right? But one of the only memories I have of receiving affection was from my Mimi. I was sick and she was rubbing my hair. It's something so simple. But we didn't get touched as kids unless it was, unless we were getting hit. And so I know, because I have that memory and it's such a powerful memory, I know what this grandmother meant to 8-year-old Holly, right? What happened is her name was Rosalie. And when she left her body, so when Rosalie died, 8-year-old Holly dissociates. And when she dissociates, Rosalie attaches to her.
Yeah, if you're not
Because,
in your body, what happens, right? So,
yeah.
okay.
So she attached to that 8-year-old aspect. And so this to say, this wasn't one little thing. This was such a massive entangling of all of the ancestors, right? And what I found, it's like I'm going this way back through the line, like finding all these pieces, right? What I found where Sonny was all of the ancestors attached to him. And what I mean by that, one person got stuck. And when that one person got stuck, everything that was in their field, like there's so much tragic stuff in this bloodline. It's so much heartache,
Oh, same.
Lifetime wouldn't make the movie. They'd say this is too depressing. What I found is that one person gets stuck, and because they have these discordant energies in their field, they start attracting satanics, demonics, dark energies, dark forces, satanic forces, demonic forces, right?
Right. That's how that
So
works.
yeah, so then they're like a little horde. And then everybody that dies after that gets sucked into the horde. Everybody from that bloodline that dies, that's been connected to this first person that didn't cross, they get sucked into the horde and attract more demons and more demons and more demons, right? And it becomes this, and this feels so purposeful, like so purposeful that they've done
Yeah.
this to enmesh us, to entangle us. So when you hear people talking about frequency fences, I believe this is the biggest frequency fence in the fourth dimension, is all of these beings that have been purposely earthbound. When we were talking a little bit about your dad, when I told you yesterday that when I was so excited, I was ugly crying when I figured out that this was done. But when I said you're free, your husband's free, your daughter's free, this is what I meant you were free from, the horde. Because because what happened is,
Okay, I just want to make it clear though for my viewers. So Holly, you did a clearing on my home. You did a land clearing, a home clearing. Yeah.
it's the home,
Okay.
but what happened next? So, all right, so I go to the new teacher I found, who's lovely, amazing, has helped me so much. I go to her, and I go to her and another teacher, and they're like, because these beings are still hanging around. I have, my ex hanging here, my father-in-law. I still had all these beings around. And so she was saying, you're rebuilding programs, just stop thinking about it. And I wasn't rebuilding programs. It's like, thank you for clearing them, whatever. And I knew they were still here, and everybody's like, they're not, they're crossed, they're fine. I'm like, I know it. I can feel it.
Yeah, sometimes they know how to hide,
Right.
right?
And the thing is, they weren't hiding.
No, from
And
others. Like somehow you knew, but because sometimes they can hide, but
well,
they
they
weren't
would
hiding.
find them and they would say that I was rebuilding the program and that I
That's
need
what
to
I'm
quit
saying, but you
thinking
knew you
about it.
weren't. Okay, but you
Yeah.
were not.
And
Okay.
she's like, everybody's like, this is why they're coming back, because you're thinking about them and you're pulling them back. And it's like, I know,
Yeah.
better. I know better. I'm not doing that, right?
Okay.
So anyway, I started asking different questions. I started asking, what do these beings want? Freedom. And I'm like, they're not hanging out here because they want to be there. So then what's with them? And then I started finding the horde. And I couldn't figure out what to do for it. And at the same time, I had all the inner child stuff coming up that started our conversation, right? Because I was working on healing all of these inner children for this body, these inner children that didn't belong to me. Because I had to somehow get them healed and get them cleared. I'm gonna maybe
But
push.
they belong to your ancestors, correct?
They belong to the ancestors. They were
Yes.
connected to the
But
ancestors.
you're
They're connected to the body, because here's
yeah.
the thing. I came in with no programming, and I want to talk about that for you too, later, when we talk after this. But I came in with no programming in my spiritual being, and a real mess in the physical being. And so in order for me to embody my physical being the way I need to, I have to clear the body. I can't get my high frequency spiritual being into a body that has 99 digits of beings attached to it. That was the last count. She's like, because I got to be so blocked that I couldn't work. And so
Yeah.
I had these two gals that both did SRT that I was kind of going back and forth between. And the last count was 99 beings. It's like, in order to do the work, this is how I found the 8-year-old, by the way, because I was asking for help. I'm like, something's happening when I'm trying to work. And I feel like I'm being interfered with, co-opted, whatever. That's how I found out that the 8-year-old was co-opting my conscious mind. She was fearful every time I started to work. And where she was, I don't know what she was experiencing. Like if I started making things move around her when, you know what I mean? Think about being in a demonic horde in the 4th dimension. So
Yep.
I would
I mean,
be,
kids get scared, right?
right. And
And that
I would be cool and calm, and all of a sudden fight or flight, and I'm going, this isn't something that scares me. What's even going on? And so this is how I found the 8-year-old, because she was literally co-opting my conscious mind. And I would have to I would have to calm that inner child, and I would have to go turn on my adult archetype again. And I'm like, oh my gosh, they are turning off. A fractured inner child is actually shutting down the adult. And if you look at them like operating systems, then you're going, okay, so my inner child is reverting my entire being back to the original operating system. And for me, that would have been at the womb. And all the way to the womb. And there's so many people stuck at the womb.
Oh yeah, I mean, when you talk about the fractured inner child, I think we had this conversation, which is really a symptom of, what we consider to be narcissism. It's
Right,
just the inner child that's completely taken over and hijacked the body,
right,
but hijacked the
right,
personality because it doesn't have its needs met.
right. And so anyway, the last count was 99. And I'm paying for these clearings, it's not, they're not like, oh, we love you so much. I'm paying and I'm paying and I'm paying and I'm coming out and I still have discarnates. I still have discarnates in possession, discarnates in past lives, discarnates in the aura. I have all kinds of separates, all the satanics, demonics, all this kind of stuff. I'm clearing them, nonstop. And
Sounds like me in my house.
and blocked so that I can't work. I mean, I have other modalities I can work with that where I'm not being co-opted, but I don't. If I'm blocked, I don't work with people. Because to me, if you are working with folks while you're blocked, it's like a surgeon working on you with dirty hands. No, thank you.
Absolutely. That's
No,
why I
thank
haven't taken clients since my dad's passing last year.
Right. You
Yeah.
can now. You can now. But anyway, your dad is crossed, and I'm sure of it. But anyway, so I take a walk. I have somebody that is really struggling. I had a client that was really struggling with her inner child. She has been so fundamental in helping me find these pieces because I have such a heart for her. And I'm like, why, if we have done an inner child progression, if we've done all these kind of things, like what's happening? And uh and so I went out into the forest and I was walking and I was crying, like ugly crying. And I was praying out there with the trees. And I was just praying for freedom. I'm like praying for freedom for my grandmother, for Sonny, talking to them, I'm sorry you had such a hard life. I'm sorry that was so painful, all this kind of stuff. And I just stood out there and I asked God, which I call spirit. I mean, I go back and forth between God, spirit, source, but I said, please help me. Please help me find freedom for all of us. And so, and I mean, I'm out there. It's just before dark, and uh, and I did that, and I came in, and the next morning I woke up, and the woman that I was so feeling so much around reaches out to me, and she says, "I don't know what you did yesterday, but I've had an amazing day. I belly laughed for the first time that I could remember and all this kind of stuff, right?" And it made me think about prayer and how, and it's like I'm in constant uh, conversation with spirit. I mean, I walk around talking to spirit, talking to God, whatever you want to call your higher power, all day. And and at the same time, I think when my sister passed and didn't cross, that's when I knew all the religion I was raised with was BS. That
Right.
it wasn't about just invite Christ in, you're A-okay, right? And I love Christ. Don't get me wrong. This is nothing about Christ. It's about how they have distorted what he came here to teach, which was love, right? And so I think what I did was baby with the bathwatered prayer and know didn't really know how powerful it was. And so I had
Well,
this.
prayer without intention. I mean, obviously, too many people are praying with the intention of fear,
Oh
because if
yeah,
yeah, and that's what's doing it. It's not necessarily the prayer, it's the intention behind it. And you see so many Christians going down this wrong path of praying out of fear, and that's what's causing the chaos. They don't
right,
see that.
right.
So,
So what happened is I had a session with my teacher that I found after, my first teacher. I had a session with her, and she cleared everybody again, and had me do a releasing statement. You can't work out your stuff through me, all the stuff people do, right? And I knew they were still here. And I knew the hollies were still here because they were in my face. I could feel them in my face. I could feel them in my neck, my shoulder, my all my left side. Left side is other people's energy. And I knew it was the hollies because they were able to, I knew it was the hollies because when they would ask,
Wait, who are the hollies?
the other walk-ins, the womb,
Oh,
baby,
I
all
see.
of
You're
these
welcome.
beings that should have easily been able to transition, right? When the way it's set up is when one soul walks in, the other one is able to leave, right?
Okay.
They're able to leave and go back to the higher realms. But these walkouts, these transfer students got caught in the horde. And so they're in my body. So that when someone would ask, is this her energy? It would say yes, because it was Holly's energy. It was Holly's inner children. It was Holly's conscious mind. It was Holly's ego, right? And I mean, this is what was coming up.
Yeah, they were hiding behind you.
Yeah, well, I mean, not really hiding. What can they do? They're in a horde. And
Right.
so while she's working on me and I know that I'm clear, I kept hearing messages around fasting. And I mean, like someone I watched on YouTube, and I just watched a snippet, was talking about Christ and how he fasted and prayed.
Yeah, you know about the Essenes? So
Oh, yeah,
the religion of
totally.
the Essenes. Yeah,
Yeah,
the fasting was a huge part of that religion.
yeah. So I got the message there and I thought, I wonder if I should fast. And then I was driving to Corvallis, north of us, a few days later, and I'm listening to a book that I've read before. It's called The Wind is My Mother. It's by Bearheart. It's a really beautiful book around shamanic traditions and indigenous healing. And he was talking about the healers and where they would get their medicine. And they would get their medicine by going to the mountain, fasting and praying. And I'm like, oh, so this is twice now. So while she had the horde cleared from me enough, and she, because I can get them away. I can get them away I can work on other people all day long. I can't work on myself because here comes the horde. I mean, I can
Yeah.
now, literally as of yesterday, I can now.
Wow. I
But
find it more difficult to work on myself than other people, but in
yeah,
general.
yeah. Um, but anyway, while she had me clear, I'm asking questions of, with my own stuff. I'm asking what benefit would it be for me to do a water fast? I get 100% benefit. I ask how many days? 3 days. And then I ask, what do I do in it? That's what it was. And it takes me to pray. Who do I pray to? God. Okay. What am I praying for? Freedom and courage. Okay. So then I have my marching orders, right? So Travis and I both, for 3 days, did a water only fast. I am an experienced faster. We did this water only fast with the intention of freeing our ancestors. And so we, both of us, were praying. This was the most painful fast. Our bodies hurt so bad, and particularly around our tailbone and our hips. And what is that? It's your root, right? It's your ancestors. And I mean, excruciating. The second night, I was like, oh my, this is so painful, and just praying constantly, please let me only feel my energy. Please let me only feel my energy, because I could feel the intensity of what was happening. And so I was lying there and I could feel all the fearful things in my field. And so I said, Spirit, I'm asking you to send unconditional love to every fearful thing in my field. And I had been to a concert of my 30-year-old son is an accomplished singer. And I had been to a concert for him, and it was the Eugene like 50th anniversary, concert or whatever. And a friend of mine had sent me a message while I was there, and she's like, take a snippet if you can. And I'm generally kind of a rule follower around things, like if somebody asks you not to do something, and they have little ladies at the beginning like no video, no cameras or whatever. And there was something about her asking me that I thought, mustn't do it, right? And so I record this part of the song. It's a song I've never heard. It's a very old hymn. And the part I recorded, just this part, was, "Oh love that will not let me go. Oh love, I rest my weary soul in thee. I give thee back the life I owe, that in thy ocean's depths its flow will richer, fuller be," right? And it's just so beautiful. And so I kept focusing on this love that doesn't let me go. And so then I started asking Spirit, please send the intelligent energy of love through all bodies, all minds, all timelines, for me and any being connected to me. Send that intelligent energy of love to find fear, and ask love to hold that fear and not let it go until it remembers its love. And I was taken into a unified field of love. And I don't know how to explain it other than that. Like that's what came through, that I was in the unified field of love. And so when I got to that unified, and I'm like, this is like crying. I looked like someone had beaten me up that second day. But I was just like crying nonstop, and I was inviting any of my clients into the field that wanted to come, because I knew if there was a horde for me, there's everybody's got a horde, because this is part of what they've done to earthbound souls. Why do they want to make all these souls earthbound? What does it do to Earth's frequency, Miriam?
Mm-hmm.
To have,
yeah, I mean, it lowers it.
Yeah, I mean, massively. This is the frequency fence.
Yeah, that makes
And
sense.
so, so I invited my clients in. I invited all ancestors in, my kids' ancestors, so their dad's lines. Any being connected to me in any way, I invited into this unified field of love. And I prayed. We both did. Prayed and cried and prayed and cried and prayed and cried these 3 days. And I woke up yesterday morning, and I knew that if I did this, and I don't know how to explain why, but I knew if I did this, they'd be set free. I knew it with everything in my being. And I got up, and I could still feel my face. And I was going, oh, and trying not to get into a place of fear, trying not to get into a place of anxiety over it, because it's something that, has definitely affected me. When you have something like this in your home, you have things like roof leaks, plumbing issues, electrical issues. Like we were
Oh
blowing
yeah.
light bulbs like it was our job. It's just nonstop, right? And so, it's out to everything, like it affects everything. And Spirit just told me to be calm and to go prep myself to work. And so I did. I got calm. I went, I prepped myself to work, and I just needed to clear these transfer students. Everybody else was clear. They were gone. They were free.
Okay.
The
Did
transfer
you see them go through some light, some gate, something?
I just knew. I
You see
knew
they're gone.
because I knew the ancestors were going. And like I feel energy big time. But I knew they were going the third day. I'm like, something's happening because my lower back and hips that I've always had issues with my whole life felt completely different. Like things felt solid back there and strong. I've had lower back problems and just a lot of scoliosis, right? Who has scoliosis? Probably somebody who's attached to a horde from the womb. My lower back didn't hurt. My hips didn't hurt. And I didn't take any supplements. Normally I'm taking magnesium and stuff so that I sleep at night or whatever. And I barely slept. I was sleeping a lot the second day during the day. I was up at night. And so I felt very different the third day. I mean, I was weak from only water fasting, but I felt things kind of solidifying. And I woke up at like 2:44 yesterday morning, and I could still feel my face. I felt things lighter, like much lighter, but I could still feel my face. And so I was just praying, and I'm like, God, I'm trusting you. I'm trusting you. I'm trusting you. Because I thought they would go with the horde, but they didn't need to go with the horde. They needed to be separated from it so that they could leave in the manner that they're supposed to leave as a transfer. So they had a
Oh.
different place to go,
So
right?
these are hollies or these are something else?
These are these are
Okay,
these are
so
all
how
of the transfer students that
transfer
were
students. Okay.
attached to the body.
Okay. These are different than your ancestors.
These are different than my ancestors. So it's like the first child that was in the womb to age 4 is the ancestor.
Okay.
That's the ancestor. And every being after that was a transfer student. So they were all attached to the body with the ancestors because
Do you
that's the bit. That's the
do you
bit.
think that do you think that any of those transfer students have to do something with ancient ancestors that you don't maybe necessarily know that
Meaning what?
like they
Oh,
were ancient ancestors?
so I believe that many of us are here specifically to do what I've just done
Okay.
because these bloodlines have been so enmeshed,
Yeah.
and you can't, it's like it is a big thing to unravel. This was, I mean, I've been working on this since that first week in July, and I just cleared it yesterday.
Wow. That's so interesting because that's my dad's passing was in July. There was a lot been going on similar for me. Very parallel.
Yeah.
Interesting. Very
So,
interesting. Then the transfer students then you noticed they were hanging around still and they wanted a different kind of release.
well, I could feel them in my face, so I prepped to
Okay.
work.
Okay.
And when I prepped to work, um, I saw that that they took me to chart 5, which is discarnates, discarnates in possession, discarnates in past lives, discarnates in the aura, separates, and then all the satanics and demonics, right? And it took me longer to clear than it would ever take normally, because they all had demons and stuff attached to them still. So it's like I had to separate out the ancestors first and get that whole thing, get them all crossed. That did the only thing that did that was prayer and fasting. And I know this was a lesson for me. And then I had to clean up these transfer students. I had to get rid of the discarnates and all of this kind of stuff from them so that they could release.
Okay.
Because they're stuck. You can't, these, when I talk about these frequency fences or whatever, stargates, we travel through stargates. I don't personally believe that folks are flying around like, I mean, I believe in aliens, don't get me wrong, but I don't believe that humans are traveling between dimensions via ships. I believe they're traveling between dimensions through stargates and through portals.
Right.
High beings can open a portal anywhere.
So why do you think that these beings were stuck? What makes them stuck?
The energies in the field. So, if you're having to get through these, I don't know what to call them other than nets or fences. If you have to get through these fences
Who's
that are,
creating these fences? Where are they coming from?
I think that the dark, I don't know what to call it. I call it the darkness. I mean, whatever you want to call the controllers, the darkness, whatever. A dark presence that's had control of the planet for a lot longer than I believe folks realize. I
How long
believe,
do you think these fences have been up, trapping these souls?
I know that my particular spiritual being hasn't been here now, because I was asking this question before about the last walk-in, and that last walk-in hadn't been here for 10,780 years, like a really long time. And I'm going, man, what happened that so many beings were like, no, thanks. This being hasn't been here for almost 100,000 years because we've been on planet way longer than anyone wants to recognize, or way longer than we've been told.
Right. I mean, yeah, we know that, but yeah, of
Yeah,
course. Yeah,
yeah,
the science says this and that. But yeah, no, of
yeah,
course.
yeah.
Okay, so when you did, so how were you able to clear then your parts, and how are you able to clear the, the exchange students?
The transfer students, I just had to,
I'm sorry, I call them exchange students. Yes,
it's
the
okay,
transfer
it's
students.
okay. I mean, I don't think we care. I know the teacher's like, oh, don't call them that. I don't care. I don't care what anybody calls it. I wasn't born in the body is the bottom line, and what is your way to call it?
Okay.
But what I had to do, they were already cleared of their programs. So this is the hard bit. They were all cleared of their programs, but I couldn't clear them from the horde because it was so massive with the ancestors. And they were stuck in it because the body was stuck in it.
Hmm.
So they had stepped into a vehicle that was stuck and couldn't get out.
Right. Okay.
And here come more and more and more. And then
Yeah.
it's, um,
It's just so interesting that they're just stuck in you. It's just it makes me think of like, well, what's happening to souls when they pass? What's going on? Are they all
yeah.
getting
So
stuck?
so my belief is that if there are souls that cross, it's a very small percentage. And I have heard mediums say, it's not true, souls don't get stuck, blah, blah, blah. There's no way. I mean, it's not true because you've experienced your dad being here. I know it's not
But the
true.
thing is, I crossed him.
Yeah,
Like I actually did cross him. And
right.
then I don't know what happened. I could tell you the story. It was very clear. I was very much under the impression I had crossed him, but then he came back where he was just lingering. But then I realized it was fragments and fragments of him. So our soul, I saw him after his passing, his soul fragmented. and it went into many, 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 many parts, and
Right.
it just spread everywhere. So it was
Right.
like clearing up, like, if something it breaks open and it's like these little beads everywhere,
Confetti.
and you're like, hmm,
Confetti.
confetti, yes, just like confetti. It's impossible to clean up. And I was like, clearing him of this part, clearing him there, clearing him there, and it was like, this is insane.
Right.
Wait,
Right.
is this what happens to souls? They just fragment into like the ethers, and I'm like, how is this okay? I don't, how is this?
It's
This
not
is so not
okay.
what I thought was going to
It's
happen.
not. It's not okay. And you know what's interesting is there's this, the funeral march, that dum 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 dum, right? That song, the words are pray for the dead and the dead will pray for you.
Okay, yes.
And I don't, I am not any kind of religious anything, but I remember singing that when I was a kid a couple times, and my mom was livid because she was a huge, she was a gospel singer and an evangelist, and you don't need to pray for the dead because as long as they've accepted Christ, they're golden, right? And what do the
Yeah, talk about
indigenous,
gaslighting.
yeah, what do the indigenous do? The indigenous pray for their ancestors, right? And so we quit honoring our dead. We quit praying
Well,
for our
even the ancient
ancestors.
religions, the ancient Hebrew text, very ancient Essenes, all the
Right,
same. Yeah, it
right,
wasn't until, yeah,
right,
the newfound Christianity that was written
right.
by a lot of government laws, but whatever, we're not get into that now.
Yeah, yeah. But anyway, um, it feels purposeful to me for sure. And we know that fear is a program. And then fear has all of this fear programming has all of these different flavors. You have depression, anxiety, addictions, escapism, self-destruction. All of these things are different flavors of fear. Just like you have different flavors of love. You have love, joy, hope, peace. You have all of these different flavors of love. What I did in these 3 days is as things came up like unworthiness, I would say, I'm asking the spirit of worthiness to search my field, search my bodies, and find its counterpart, and to hold it and not let it go until it remembers its love. And I did this over and over and over. And this is something anybody can do at home. Like if you have things coming up in you, if you're feeling angry, we are love. We are love made manifest here on earth. And it's not spiritual bypassing. This is the spiritual work. That if you have anger coming up in your field, you acknowledge it and you
Mhm.
say, I'm asking the intelligent energy of love to go find any anger in my field, anything that's angry, and to hold it and not let it go until it remembers its love. And I did this for 3 days with I mean, every emotion that came up, everything that came up. And I kept asking to fill the ancestors and anything attached to them with unconditional love, because I also had my friend Karen, my shamanic friend was in my horde. My husband's dad was in my horde. It wasn't just my bloodline. It became, my father-in-law. I had two father-in-laws. My father-in-law from my first marriage passed very recently. And then
Mhm.
my father-in-law that passed in 2022. So I had two father-in-laws.
Well, yeah, marriages are a karmic exchange. So
Yes,
that karmic debt from the family line, we then carry on.
right,
So rather whether we get divorced or not, so
right.
it's like you've already made the karmic exchange. So
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
You've agreed to the horde. So without knowing, right?
yeah,
So anyway, it's really caused me to think about our ancestors, like how many people can go back and even know the names of their ancestors beyond their grandparents.
yeah. That's the thing is we don't, and so and then these stuck ancestors, and then so then like. you and I, this is a term, a Lisa Renee term, obviously the genetic path cutter. I don't know, how many use it, but, lately it's been coming up a lot where we take on the role to completely expedite the clearing of the karmic, the ancestral karma.
Right,
So that we take on that role. And
right.
so and again, I can see it in an astrology chart. I can show you where it is in your astrology chart.
Yeah,
I can see it in people's astrology chart. And it's a job we've taken on, it's a role we've taken on. And so we can look at it from a victim mentality, or we can look at it from, well, we've taken this responsibility role on, and because because we know how to do it, and so many others don't in
yeah,
our line, in others lines, in our karmic obligations and exchanges, we do. So we
yeah.
do it.
And for me, like it's funny because when I really started feeling stuff clear on the third day, when my back started feeling more solid, I was in gratitude. And I
Yeah,
was just crying in gratitude, thanking all of the ancestors for what they
yeah,
were teaching me
it's very powerful. Yeah,
because I wouldn't know any of this. Thanking the inner children, blessing them all for the path that it was a tricky path. There's some sketchy stuff in my ancestral line.
yeah.
So, I was just in so much gratitude, and that sending the intelligent energy of love to find anything in your field that isn't love, hold it and don't let it go, literally will clear people.
Yeah.
It's a way to self-heal. That's one thing I found. The other, and I wouldn't have that's one thing that came in. The other thing that came in, because I was having these thoughts, right? And I would have these thoughts pop up that I knew weren't mine. And the first thought when I was driving home from Corvallis that day, I'm driving down this country road and there's this beautiful, like, big bell. It looks like almost like a Liberty Bell shape. And it's just sitting out. And my thought is, man, it'd be so easy to take that. And then I'm like, I know that wasn't me. And so I said to Spirit, I said, Spirit, there's a part of me that just thought about taking that bell. And I release her to your care now. And I released. I like literally released. So that I'm like, oh, okay. And so I started doing that. There's a part of me that is afraid.
That's such a better approach than the alternative, which so many people do, which is, I can't believe I would think that. I'm so ashamed of myself. Why would I think anything like that? And they shove it into a corner somewhere.
Spiritual
And then
bypassing
it
it. It's
festers and it just grows
yeah.
bigger and it becomes a demon. And it's like, if more of us took that route of, I release, spirit, I release, I see this, I release it, it's free. It doesn't need to be shoved into the closet out of shame. It can
That
be
is the
released.
work. That is the
Yeah,
work. The work
right.
is I acknowledge this thing that is not me
Mhm.
and I release it to your care now.
Right.
I did this all the way home. Spirit, there's a part of me that's afraid I will not ever be free. And I release her to your care now. There's a part of me that's afraid of driving through the forest at night, through these curvy roads, and I release her to your care because I'm not afraid. I know it's not my fear. And so I just allowed whatever wanted to come up to come up. Like I mean, I can't say that I set the intention that whatever wants to come up, I just allowed it. I allowed everything that came up. I started seeing all of these like flashes of different times in my lifetime. And a time that I was embarrassed when I was 5. And there's a part of me that's embarrassed about falling in front of everybody when I was 5, and I release her to your care now. There's a part of me, and I did this, and I cleared and cleared and cleared all the way home. And so I knew that was, and I wouldn't have that. I wouldn't have that tool to share with others
Right.
if I hadn't been
Yeah.
through this. I
Right.
wouldn't know how powerful prayer and fasting like fervently praying and fasting with the intention of, clearing something like this, I wouldn't know the power had I not had to do it. I wouldn't know about sending the intelligent energy of love to find anything in my field that isn't, if it weren't for this. And that's where I
Yeah.
sat on that third day, was just in gratitude and awe of the whole thing. And I'm not gonna lie, there were some times, especially, I mean, since July 1st, right? This has just been such a big thing. And there were a lot of times that I was very frustrated because I'm being told not to rebuild programs. I'm being told, a lot of things that I knew in my being weren't true, which is why I say you listen to your being. You listen to your being and you keep following the trail.
Well, a lot of it's not necessarily, in our conscious. So, our DNA carries the
Yeah,
messages, the frequency, the energy from, lifetimes past of ancestral energy as well. So say like your great grandmother, suffered from psychosis, and it comes up in you, in your body, you can feel it. There's part of you that's here to clear it, so, or someone like say a great grandmother had a horrible marriage, and she couldn't get out. She felt trapped in it constantly. So
right,
like it's almost like you're automatically manifesting this marriage, whether you're with the most amazing person or not. It's like it just comes out because
right,
it's a programming in that genetic marker and that genetic DNA. So
right,
it's not like necessarily recreating sometimes it keeps coming up because again, it wants to be witnessed in a way that's really witnessed,
right,
not just in a, oh, that's silly, or oh, why am I fighting like this? Or it's like, oh, this is deep. This is something that, really wants attention and love and really wants to be seen.
right,
That's the only clearing it's the only way it can really be cleared is by
right.
being very bountifully witnessed, in a way that's so deep and so held. So yeah,
We've
it's,
made it, well, and I mean it, and when I say we've had some help, right? We've had some help with all of the like religious programming and just all of this stuff, but it's been made so much more difficult than it needs to be. You have folks online, you have to go out during a full moon and take your 27, pointed sage star, and you start on the 13th point, people making all these like really um,
yeah, the Gnostics
elaborate.
believed in ritual, though the power of ritual
Yeah,
can I actually
I'm not talking about like rituals in general are bad. I'm not saying that. I'm saying that a lot of stuff has been made so complicated
yeah,
that the average human can't grasp it, right?
yeah.
And so here is something that's so easy to grasp, and it's important to me. I mean, I do sessions, I charge for sessions. I'm in a realm where I need the energy of money in order to pay bills and this kind of stuff, right? But where my heart is finding things like these techniques that I can share with people so that folks that can't maybe afford to do a session or can't, don't have time, they're working two jobs, whatever it is. These things are so simple and they can sit and do them and clear themselves. This is the work. This is the
Mhm.
work. What's coming up in you? Acknowledge what it is, give it a name. I'm feeling unworthy right now. There's a part of me that's feeling unworthy.
Mhm.
There's a part of me that's feeling jealous. There's a part of me that's feeling left out. Whatever it is that's coming up, whatever you're experiencing, you're drawing into you because we
Right.
don't attract what we desire. We attract what we are.
Exactly.
Yeah.
How we feel.
Yeah.
Yes. If we hate ourselves, we're going to attract a partner that hates us too.
Right.
And then we're going to project it onto them as they are the culprit. And,
Right.
and we don't see what's actually happening. So
Right.
it is very important to do the work, or especially as a parent, a child doesn't, necessarily, they will treat themselves the way you treat, because you are imprinting on them. So if you, again, in your state of self-loathing, the child will end up doing things in their future that, don't respect themselves.
Yeah.
So it is really important as a parent to do this work, especially as a parent, but, even anyone who, again, the really can come up in the relationship, it can come up in any way. So we
Yeah.
do have to, it comes back to
Anyone,
us.
anyone for sure. And when you look at your role as a parent, this is about freeing your children from the horde. This is
Yeah.
about freeing your children from this ancestral programming that can be triggered in their field. It just needs the right combination of circumstances, right? And then
Yeah.
it triggers the
Or
program.
like a word. Oh,
Right,
goodness.
right. Yeah. It triggers
Yeah.
the program, and then you're sitting there going, where where'd this come from? What happened? What just happened to my life? You know,
Mhm.
for us, my youngest son, whose dad passed away that was here, he's been in a car accident where he barely left the road, like he just hit the side of the road because you have to get through pretty windy mountain roads to get to our home. And his car ended up flipping, and he ended up backward in a tree, hanging in a tree over the river, like, and with just one cut on his finger because he's so protected. I wrap him up so tight. He had that.
Wow.
Last April, had a house fire where he ended up with third-degree burns. And I mean, like really intense stuff. So,
Is this the
you know,
son where you left your body and died during birth?
yeah, this is the
Okay.
sound. This is the
Okay,
sound.
so this is interesting
She's
because when
one
you
of the ones that was there. That 50 or 35, I think 35 or 34-year-old in 2003. I knew she was still there.
huh.
Because when I
Okay.
would ask to see who's here, I would see her. And I thought, maybe it was an aspect that was just checking in on Z when I didn't know, before I knew all this stuff.
Sorry, I'm going to be selfish for a second here. My
Oh, no.
father passed in in July, and my brother had his first child, who was a son, in August. And his wife, my sister-in-law, almost died in childbirth. She completely passed out. She almost bled to death. They had to keep her alive with blood and transfusions, and they had to give her a hysterectomy and all of that because she almost bled out to death. And it was a boy. And I find it interesting because before my dad's passing, before people's passing, they start to, remember aspects of their life. And he was talking about how he never had a father, and he was recounting, being a child, never really had a childhood, that kind of thing. And his, talk about inner child, this fractured inner child, definitely ran the show with him. Very narcissistic.
Yeah.
So I find that very fascinating. There was that connection there because his passing, and then my nephew's entrance, and then his, the mother had to die almost in order for that to happen. It was very, very bizarre. But when my dad passed, I didn't even know he passed. I went into a meditation with him. He was in the nursing home, and I saw a huge white light around him, and I saw
Mhm.
him pass through the white light, and I saw. But we'll talk about the white light, I guess. Then, well, I saw him move through the white light, and I felt peace and resolve. I felt like, but then all of a sudden, I started feeling grief, like immense grief, and then I saw these dark beings. They're like demonics. They saw me and they came to chase me, and I closed everything out, and I disconnected, and then I went back and I started living in like a state of cortisol. Like it was just so much cortisol for months after that. Even after my dad passed on my birthday, by the way, on my birthday. The minute I was born.
Wow. I mean, that's just a coincidence. You
Oh
know it.
yeah.
Yeah, wow, that's intense. I know
Yeah.
why. I know why you told me that story because I forgot an important bit. You know, there's so many people that are saying, don't go to the light,
Hmm.
right? And what I was shown, so how I got demonics, when you have a horde of demonics, I started asking love to go and hold every demon. I said, separate the forces because what happens is if you have one satanic being or a couple of satanic beings, they're very easy to clear. But what happens is our ancestors are being brought into the demonic forces, right? Because they get fragmented. It's like everything gets exaggerated. So if they were negative, they're extra negative, right? And so what I did was I asked the intelligent energy of love to separate the forces into individual beings and to go and hold those beings until they remembered they were love. And I mean, I was doing this like a meditation. This was when I was in the unified field of love. And I was talking to them and I was saying, you've been tricked. I've been tricked too. Look at your heart. Look down at your heart and see the light in your heart. Your light, you come from light. Look at your light. Look at your light. Look at your light, and it's growing, right? And this is how I believe we're supposed to transition.
Okay, so I missed that part. I just kind of cut it off before. I think that's what happened is my fear attracted them, and then they just kind of like ran
I
amok
think,
after that.
well, so when we hear about false light, I think one of the biggest false lights is as we're dying, right? Because they're projecting this light and beings are thinking, oh, this is the way to go. And they're being sucked into a horde because your heart is a stargate. You know, your heart is literally, you can travel through your heart. And so I was directed to turn them to look at their hearts and to see the light in their heart and to see it growing and to transition through their channel. Go into the
How can you
light
do
in
that
your
to a
heart.
demonic? Like they're not gonna do that. They're gonna
When you when you separate demonic forces, these are divine beings. These are divine,
really?
these are
Okay,
divine,
I've
these
never been
are,
able to negotiate with a demonic.
well, I mean, you don't negotiate it with them. You send love to go and hold them and not let them go until they remember their love.
Okay,
And
I mean that's better
so,
than sending them to the hell realms, I guess.
well, I mean, you can send them to the hell realms, and then what are they going to do? Grab some friends and come back. Or, or you can, you know, but I knew how the forces were built, and I knew that there were beings in the demonic forces that were divine beings that had been trapped and fragmented to a point that they couldn't remember or reach their divinity again.
Yeah, I mean it's true. It
But
is true.
I think all of us, this is what we're supposed to do, is that when we pass, we look to our hearts, we look to the light in our hearts and transition through our channel.
Well,
And that's,
it was a light through his chest. I actually helped him. I saw I was drawing like a light around him. I didn't even know what I was doing. I'll be honest. I
yeah,
was
yeah,
there in meditation on my birthday. That was all I was doing,
yeah,
and I got sent there, and I was there, and I was like drawing this light around his chest, and it was being drawn around his chest, and then it expanded out of the width of his whole body, and then it all of a sudden I could feel the release, and then I could feel like the grief, and then I could see the demonics. And it's almost like they turned around, like, what was that? And then they
yeah,
saw me, and then they came flushing towards me.
right.
And I was like, oh shit. I was
Yeah,
like, oh. And
yeah.
then that's why, yeah,
No, thank you. Hard pass. Yeah,
I don't think it worked, but
I'm not looking for a new team, but
I
no,
think that's what happened though. I was like,
right.
regardless, because I knew what I was doing, you
Yeah.
know.
So what I think has happened with a lot of these beings And it's just like when I teach people how to do inner work, like when you are in your, when you travel through your heart, you're in, you know, what I call your YO universe. You're in your inner universe. Anything that comes up there, like if you were to see something that looked demonic, you're to send it love because it's your inner world. What are you going to fight in your inner world? Do you want to go to war in your inner world? No, no.
Yeah, so many of us end
Want
up
to do
doing that
that?
because that's we
I
don't know any
know.
other way.
I know, but that's
I
not what
know.
you're going to do.
I
You're going to
know.
send love to it until it remembers its love.
Yeah.
Because a lot of these scary fragments are us, it's our
Yeah.
fragments.
Yeah, absolutely. 100%. You know, and that's what I was trying to understand if those were my dad's fragments or they're my fragments or they're like collective ancestral fragments or what all of that was. And you know, it was definitely a journey that I've been on with him since then.
Yeah.
So then I realized, yeah, the soul does fragment. Absolutely. Now, is there a way to stop it from fragmenting, do you think?
So I don't know if it's actually that the soul fragments at that moment as much as it is the soul calling all of itself in its fragmented state into presence, right?
Okay.
And it could be like if you have a traumatic death, you could definitely fragment, you know, there. But I think that the confetti is stuff. I just got the picture of Pigpen from Charlie Brown, you know, the kid that goes walking around and he has the big, you know,
Mhm.
dust cloud with him. Um, you know, it is the energy that we carry unknowingly with us. Um,
Wow.
but the bit about the demons, just a little bit more on that, is that had I, you know, had I just prayed that the demons be gone, maybe that would have worked. That's just not what came to me, you know, through this prayer and fasting. I wasn't taught to do what I did. And my guidance was to send love to each of them as individual beings, to separate out the forces, to bubble them up. I actually was asking them to be bubbled in the light of Christ and then asking for love to go and hold them and counsel them to find the light of spirit in their heart. Because I knew if they could see the light of spirit in their heart, they would
Oh,
transit.
all I could think of was those demons were mad at me for sending him to a place that they wanted him,
They were
and
going to
I
get him
took him.
anyway. They were going to get him anyway. That's
But
why he,
how? If I was like, that's the thing is that I feel like they were just angry at me for like removing him from them. Like
no, I
that's how
mean,
I felt.
but you didn't. Because if you had, I wouldn't have found him at your house with all the
That's
other
what I'm
stuff.
saying. That's what's so weird because I felt it in my, but you know, we talked about this
Yeah,
earlier.
yeah,
Like
yeah,
if you just know, you're in your knowing, you just know,
yeah,
like I just knew I crossed him. Like I just
yeah.
knew it.
You
But
did.
like that's the thing is then it was like more fragments just showed up. And it was like how did that happen? And then he kept showing up. And I was like,
Right.
how did that happen? And then I got the idea maybe my mom actually grabbed him back. But that's
No,
not possible.
no.
Because you know what?
Well,
Yeah, that's not possible. So
well, so
because
there's 90 hours. There's 90 hours between when a person dies and when they cross. If they go past that 90 hours, they're earthbound. But what I believe happens is that you clear them of all their energy and they are crossing and then they're pulled back into the horde.
okay. Okay, so you kind of have to what just try to be with them during that 90 hours. Say if you want to assist, you know, someone in crossing like
I
thoroughly.
think I think the work is praying for the ancestors, praying for freedom for the ancestors. You know, thank you for my ancestors. I ask to fill all of my ancestors and anything attached to them with unconditional love. And making that such a regular practice. Um, the unconditional love, filling something with unconditional love, I have a whole process I go through to advance the inner child. When you have an inner child that's fractured and at the womb, I have a whole process I go through where I find what age were they fragmented at, who was there, what are the energies, right?
And you do this during like session work,
Yeah,
or do you have
yeah,
a,
yeah.
okay,
Yeah, I do that during session work.
okay.
And which is great, but again, it's like how do I make that available for people that I can't be with? I'm one person. And what I found was when I couldn't work, what I found was that if I would just ask for the inner child that was activated to be filled with unconditional love, it would advance the child. It would advance the inner child to the next fragment.
Okay.
And so, and I guess that's when I talk about, I'm not trying to make fun of people that do all the coaching rituals and all that kind of stuff. I guess my point was what I have been taught is to keep it simple, like over the last few weeks in particular, that we've overcomplicated it. Name it and hand it over. Name it and hand it over. Name it and hand it over. Name the emotion, send love to it, ask love to hold it and not let it go until it remembers its love. These are really simple things. Somebody's given you a hard time, fill them with unconditional love, which is a difficult thing to do
I was
sometimes,
just
right?
gonna say that's actually really harder. It's a lot harder than it sounds. Because
Right.
first of all, you have to feel unconditional love yourself, and how many of us just walk around feeling unconditional love, And
Well,
then you're
so
sending it to them, So
so what
that's
I
pretty
would do in
difficult.
that instance is I would say, Spirit, there's a part of me that wants to withhold love from this person that's being hateful right now. And I release her to you. I release her to your care, right?
Okay, I like that.
That that's what you're doing. It's like it's almost like being an archaeologist, but for spirit, right? You're on this treasure hunt. And the treasure is your freedom at the end of it.
Mm, yeah,
Because you're
that's a good
finding,
one.
yeah, you're finding
And that's
everything.
what all of these disincarnates and demonics and all that's all they really want. And so just even offer them the freedom. Like, do you want freedom or do you want to
They
be
don't,
trapped like this and
the
controlled?
bit is they don't recognize themselves as part of the light anymore. It's not about them not wanting freedom, and they can be they're subjugated. Like demonic forces are not at the top of the, nasty chain, I'm sure, because
Mhm.
they have been put into service by some other force that subjugates them.
Mhm.
So yeah, saying you've been tricked. You're light too. Look at your heart. You've been tricked. So have I. Look at your
Wow.
heart quick, right? Because it's a trick and something so amazing that the gal that was like, you have 99 digits of beings here with you. And I'm like, that sounds about right, Kathleen. I'm not going to lie because I'd felt so interfered with. Like 99 digits. Are you sure that's all? And so, like, meaning 99 digits of beings were hanging out. And and one of the things she told me, she's like, your spiritual consciousness is so high, and you're off my charts, but your body has some catching up to do. And I said, oh, I know. And she said, you've chosen the body, you've chosen the bloodline for what it's here to teach you. And it's so true. We want to be, like you said earlier, you're talking about the victim. That's where we want to be, is in that victim. Why is this always happening to me? And I'm just trying to help people, like it would be easy for me to go that way.
Oh yeah.
It would be very easy to go that way, but recognizing just all of the beauty that has come out through this, and all of the new tools that I have received that then I can share with everybody, that I can't have sessions with, right? That's what my YouTube is. I just share healing stuff that comes through, right? Because I have a heart for humanity, and humanity's in so much separation.
Well, even the healing work of clearing the ancestors, you're actually breaking through that frequency fence. So you're doing a huge service to the planet, you
Right.
know? Like that alone is huge.
99
So
digits of
everything else is
eight
just,
is a lot.
yeah. I mean, but again, so you have to break through the frequency fence to move them through. So you're breaking holes in that. So you're actually doing some very important work on that. And then all of their, yeah. So you think about them and what could be even connected to them. It
Right.
could be like a whole snowballing effect.
Right.
So,
And that's why I believe that's why I was directed not to pray just for my ancestors, but to pray for my ancestors and everything connected to them. Myself, I kept praying for all bodies and all minds to be cleared and everything connected to me. You and I have done this before, before we've done a podcast before, and we're connected on social media. Anybody connected to me is a big
oh
number.
gosh, I'm constantly clearing things and people off of me. Like it's like a 24/7 job. It's like
Yeah.
constant.
And
And I don't know what it is. It's kind of crazy, but it's like, does everyone just walk around just connecting to everything and everyone? I suppose so. I
we're
suppose so.
all
We are all
one.
connected.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
But
that's where you
but we
say,
still need to be sovereign beings.
yeah,
So
yeah. Well, that's where you say, there's a part of me that I feel like is picking up everybody else's energy, and I
yeah.
release her to the care of spirit now.
Okay. Yeah.
Find anything in my field that is pulling in other energies. I'm asking the intelligent energy of love to go find in my field what is bringing this into my field. Any programs, any energies, any entities, find what it is, and then hold it and don't let it go. That's what the song will, that song, Oh Love That Will Not Let Me Go. I realized in one of my fetal crying moments in that 3-day fast, like how powerful it had been for me to receive just that bit. Oh, love that will not let me go. I rest my weary soul in thee. And just recognizing that we're always held by love. And it's just getting to the place where we can remember and see that we are.
Yeah. Yeah, and it is the fast is very important because it does clear us of everything that's extraneous so that we can come back to what's really important, which is
Right.
essentially love. Yeah. And that gratitude we have for that first thing we eat, it's
Oh
like
my,
immense, it like opens us up. It's like, oh, thank you, God. It's like that
best thing I've ever tasted. Yeah.
yeah, the
Yeah.
whole process of fasting is really amazing. Yeah, actually last time I fasted was actually, it was actually like a few months ago. No, it was last year. Last year. And it was something I was having bad menstrual cramps, and I never have menstrual cramps ever, never have menstrual pain. But I got the message I was actually clearing a space for an end of an era. And it was right after I had like the last Thanksgiving with my father or something. So like I think it was
Wow.
clearing that way for him. And again, this isn't, there's no, well, it's a textbook guidance in what we're doing. And it
Right.
looks different for each bloodline, I'm sure, too. So it's, it's quite fascinating to go through these processes and share them. So thank you, for sharing your experience. And, I'm sure others can find some solace in, listening to that and even sharing our story together and
Yeah.
how therapeutic that can be. Yeah, this has been a really interesting conversation. So
Yeah.
thank you again for kind of talking to me today and sharing a lot of your stories are really
Yeah.
cool.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me. I know that it wasn't a mistake, that it's you.
Yeah. Nothing's ever coincidence, right?
No, but I mean, I've had other people reach out to me and ask, "Hey, do you want to do this?" And then say, "I'll reach out to you." And it's so and I'll talk to you when we're not recording, but about it. But I know that it was you that I was supposed to bring this information through with.
Well, it is fascinating because I've been tracking a lot of this ancestral
Yeah.
information. I actually, the last podcast I did was with one of my mentors, and we kind of went over this, and we even talked about genetic path cutting and how that. I mean, I've really been starting to unravel and track it because this is really coming up in the collective now as they're finding new scientific data that really corroborates the fact that we carry trauma and genetics. I mean, even it's being passed on through the father and mother. So, it's not just, it's actually being corroborated. So it's real. It's stuff that's we're really dealing with. And then if you think about that, then you think about, well, how many generations of this trauma are we actually working with here,
I'm gonna I'm gonna ask that question today because I just it was my first day off a fast yesterday, and what I was most concerned with is that it had cleared for um all of the people that I invited into the field.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I'm sure that they really appreciated that clearing. So good work on that. Um, all right, Holly. Well, I will put all your information if anyone's interested. And so you providing sessions? Do you do classes or any kind of programs, or right now it's mostly one-on-one sessions?
Mostly one-on-one, and then I
Okay.
offer a lot of like everything that I've shared with you today around the tools that have come through. I'll share that for free on YouTube.
Okay. And
Um,
yeah, you do give really good insights, sometimes downloads that you have on Instagram. So
yeah,
hopefully.
and what those are is me sharing exactly what's coming up in the collective because through my session work, I'll see a pattern and I'll recognize, oh, this is something people need to know.
I
So,
understand. I used to do that when I took sessions. I hope to get back to it soon. But for now, you can contact Holly if you're looking for a session. And you can find a website under this video. So thanks again, Holly. All right. Well, bye-bye to everyone today and have a good week. We'll
thank
see you
you
next
for
time.
having me.
Bye-bye.